Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh and welcome to another review. Today we're going to be talking about the BUCHARDT S300 Mark IIs, which are those speakers back there. Now you might be wondering why I have this up here. This is the BUCHARDT S400. It's kind of bigger brother, or more expensive brother really. This is BUCHARDT's kind of flagship speaker as of right now. What I loved about this speaker in the review was kind of the soundstage capability, the warm overall delivery. It's got a smooth kind of sound signature to it. And it did that whole bit really well, just being an extraordinarily pleasing speaker. Now the reason why I bring that up is because that's almost exactly what the S300 offers, but there are actually different benefits and drawbacks depending on which speaker you go for. And despite the $500 US difference between the two, these coming in at $1,700, those coming in at $1,200, both a premium price speaker for sure, although not anywhere near the top end of hi-fi speakers in terms of price. But they're more competitive than I expected. And this starts with everything from the build quality. Now the build of the S300s is pretty unique. It's got this slightly slanted back, so it's not completely straight box. It's got the 6-inch woofer on the top, and oddly enough has a 3/4 inch tweeter at the bottom. And then it's got a big passive radiator in the back, this whole bit right here. Now in comparison to those S300s, which are taller, longer, and wider, bigger in just about every circumstance. Same woofer, except that instead of having a passive radiator, has a port on the back. That actually has more bass. That is a slightly warmer speaker and a whole lot more hard hitting in the bass response than this speaker is. So they're actually surprisingly similar. But there is a trade-off that you have to make between these two if you're deciding between these. One is going to be that this speaker, the S400, its soundstage is better, whereas the S300 has more bass. It's got a stronger kick, it goes lower in the frequency response. This was getting to about the mid 40s, mid 50s, where it was kind of starting to be like, all right, like there's not a whole lot below that. That will actually get you into the mid 30s relatively confidently from your seating position. It hits very low and very hard. So when it comes to the S300, it's a 4-ohm speaker. It's got sensitivity level about 88 dB. It's got a 6-inch woofer, 1-inch dome tweeter, and a port. It's a pretty standard speaker build. There's not really too much exciting, although it is kind of on the bigger end of what I would consider like an actual bookshelf speaker. So I do have some comparable aspects to the S400s, but if you haven't heard the S400s, I'm going to compare this to a different speaker that is a lot cheaper, which is the KEF Q150. I think a lot more people will have heard of the KEF Q150s than will have heard the any BUCHARDT really. So the Q150 sound signature is a lot like the S300s, except the S300s stand over here just on steroids. Like it's just better in every single capacity. It hits lower, its soundstage is better, it's more full, it's got a better presentation. It's just better in every single way. But it's also a lot more expensive. I think the Q150s are like $350 to $500 depending on when you get them. And these are $1,200 US. So you would expect it to be better, and it is, but that's kind of a point of comparison for the general sound signature that you're getting. If you've heard that, just imagine it better in every capacity. So the treble response here is not going to be the strongest point of this. It is a clean sounding treble, but it also is fairly warm, and it doesn't have an extraordinarily amount of detail, nor does it take an analytical approach. And a lot lower end speakers will have a lot more information in the top end than this does. Think like ELAC UB5s. Those are going to be a lot more present in, you know, the 5K and above area. And this kind of provides an interesting look into the psychology of two different general types of buyers for speakers. I think there's a subsection of people who just want the truth of the music, whether that's painful or, you know, it doesn't quite sound right, or it's, you know, it doesn't quite sound that good. It's not pleasant to listen to. And there's that people who want to know when the music is like that. And that can also be very rewarding when the music is really well produced. But it's something to where like you wouldn't want to listen to like Metallica on it because it's just really punishing. The S300s are in the other section of people, the people who just want to be lied to. Like they want everything to sound pleasant. They want everything to be enjoyable no matter the recording quality. And that's what the S300 offers. It lies to you in a very pleasant, very enjoyable way, similar to the S400. They're not truth-telling speakers, not by a long shot. And this is with the mid-range as well. Mid-range has this incredible warmth and I'm gonna say fuzziness to it, like a kind of a warm, like, you know, blanket type of hug. but it's not blurry. I don't mean it in a blurry sense or like in a visual fuzziness to where things aren't clear. It's very clear, but it's just got this warm hug to it. And one of the characteristics that I really enjoyed about this speaker was, despite the warm hug, normally you'll see like the vocals get a little loose when that happens, right? They don't quite have the control. This keeps the control, it keeps the quality, it keeps the rigidity of the vocal placement, and it doesn't seem to muddy with the other frequencies or anything like that. So everything's well separated, but it is kind of an overall warmer tilt. Now the bass response. So my reference system right now is a pair of SVS Ultra towers. So those have an MTM setup on top. They have dual 6-inch woofers on the top, a 1-inch dome tweeter, and then they have dual ported 8-inch woofers on the bottom. So it's a lot of speaker. And that, in comparison to this, they're like $2,000 a pair. When it comes to the bass response, there were times that I actually had the BUCHARTs on, because I have an amp that can play out of 2 different outputs, and I can just switch between the outputs. There were times where I had the BUCHARTs on and I thought I had the SVSs on, just judging by the bass response. It is shockingly good sometimes. And it's also able to do a mix of different bass response capabilities. So a lot of times you'll see speakers that can do one of 2 things. Like if there's an underlying bass track, they can play the bass track and keep it separated from all the other music. So you have all your other, high-end and middle and mid-range music up here, or sounds up here, and then you kind of have this underlying bass track. Now, some speakers can do that, some speakers can't. Then you have another speaker that may have the underlying bass or may not, but it can provide a really good punch. And it can provide that kind of, that really impactful, hard-hitting bass response that kind of hits you in the chest type of thing. And some of those speakers can do that, some speakers can't. And some speakers, like the BUCHART S300, can do both. They can provide that really underground type of sound for the bass, and they can give you that really quick, impact for things like, bass guitar or drums. I was listening to Chocolate Chip Trip by Tool, which is a great imaging test, by the way, but also about halfway through the song, there starts coming in this really well-recorded drum, and it's got some kick to it, and it's got some meat to it. And on speakers that don't have the bass response, they don't have that kick, they don't have that ability, it just sounds kind of dead. Like most drums on kind of an average pair of speakers don't really sound that realistic, right? They don't have that impactful feeling of actually being in the presence of a real drum. Even like, the snare drum, for example, will have a visceral, like, impactful feeling. It's a very powerful instrument. And that's not even talking about the kick drum or anything like that. And this can display all of that with a decent amount of impact, great imaging, and it's able to just play it so well. Okay, for this last bit, I'm gonna bring up the S400s again. So one of the trade-offs that you have to decide between, if let's say you're deciding between these two, S400 has more soundstage, or better soundstage, more complete soundstage, and the S300 has more bass. Now, the difference in soundstage is that the soundstage capability on this is like a U-shaped soundstage where you got this deep middle field, and then you have the sounds on the left and the right, and they kind of wrap around your head a little bit. And they do that very well. And if it's set up optimally, you get this great, really good experience, especially for like anything binaural or anything with really good left and right panning imaging. This speaker is not the best, and neither is the S300 at kind of a depth perspective of like, you can have a sound like, 5 feet away or 1 foot away or like 10 feet away. It can't really do that dexterity very well, but it does do the right and left and the surround super well. So where this differs from the S300 is that the 400 is U and the S300 kind of flattens that U out. So the sounds that are happening on the right and on the left aren't really happening on the side of you. They're just happening on the far kind of right wall and the far left wall, if you can imagine it like a big straight wall. So it's happening kind of further out on the left and the right. You can have a preference on which one you like, I think, but I think it's a more impressive display of soundstage. Like I think if you took somebody who's never listened to a speaker and showed them a really well soundstaging instrument, I think they'd be more impressed by this. So I'm going to consider this technically superior, even though there's not really a classification for what makes good soundstage, other than usually depth is kind of the defining feature. But either way, there is a bit of a sacrifice here. Now, if you've heard the S400s, the difference of the S300s in their optimal position is like 20% better bass. Well, I shouldn't say better. I think the bass is cleaner on this, like it's more well controlled up to a certain point. even though you can actually push those S300s harder than you can push the S400s. But the S400 just has more. It's just got like a boost there that the S400 does not have. So in conclusion, is the $1,200 asking price a fair asking price? One, it's a big speaker. You get a lot of speaker, same quality of build as the S400, and you get something that you really don't need a subwoofer with, which is not something that I all too often recommend. If you want to hit, the full range of stuff, like if you want to hit all the way down to 20 hertz, yes, the subwoofer is going to be recommended, but you really get a very complete picture of the sound with this. You get all the way to the top end, although it's not very forward up there, and you get all the way to kind of almost the bottom end. And it is very forward in the bass response and kind of the lower mid-range. It's very punchy, impactful, and warm. Now with the speaker, I'm gonna say that it is recommended, but it's not really like a shockingly good deal to me. I don't really see it being something that I'm like, yes, 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 yes. It's kind of just like, yeah, I think that's a fair price, but I don't think it's some like extreme value proposition for $1,200. I think $1,200 is about the upper limit of what I find acceptable to pay for it. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up. Visit some other reviews I have on this YouTube channel. Subscribe if you're not already. Please like and comment in the video. It does help me with these ever-changing YouTube algorithm. It's brutal. Visit the merchandise store. Geez, can't talk. Visit the merchandise store so that I can pay for classes on how to speak properly. Thank you. Okay, all right. My name is Josh, signing off.